What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Southern Drawl Law Off the Cuff live show. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Going to make a couple announcements here. I've started a Substack. Let me explain why I've started a Substack. So I started the second channel, and my idea was that there were certain people that didn't love police interactions, but were more interested in the courtroom side of it. So I started the second channel, which was the Court of Public Opinion. And it went phenomenally for a second channel. I mentioned it. It's because of you guys, but I mentioned it on here, and immediately, like the first video, I got like 60,000 views. So I monetized that channel in like 3 or 4 days. So once I got it monetized, I realized that it's basically the same folks that are on my regular channel. And so what I found myself was in a situation where I had divided attention and I had to neglect one or the other. And so I thought, well, you know what? I can just do this on my regular channel. And actually I had a couple subscribers that I trust and have been with me from the beginning that mentioned, I'm not sure why you're doing a second channel. And then I started thinking about it. Maybe the reason I did a second channel was just because I wanted to have a different side of what I do. And so that got me to thinking, with a lot of people asking me about opportunities to support the channel and that kind of thing, I would just build a community. And so I chose Substack because it gives me an opportunity to write as well. Substack is a newsletter blog type site. And so if you're not familiar with it, and even if you don't like reading, I would suggest that you go over. It's free to join. We're going to talk about some of the different options, but it's free to join. And like I posted a blog post yesterday as my first blog post. I'm going to try to post 3 days a week, like 1,000 words or so blog post, and just different stuff, different, like sort of maybe the backstage idea process of how I arrive at the stuff that I talk about, what the research might look like, what sort of angles I considered in the process of coming to the opinion that I have or whatever. And just some stuff that I can't get into. Because a lot of times what I get in the comments is, well, why didn't you say this? Or why didn't you say that? And the truth is, you just can't cover everything. And then I also don't really script what I'm going to say. So people will come into the comments and they'll take issues with particular words. Like I might say, the police have a right to do something. I don't really mean a right. I mean that they have the authority. But, you know, somebody who just can't get over themselves for 30 seconds get in there and they want to make a whole war out of the fact that I use the word right instead of authority. So, you know, as a result of that, I'm going to be pulling back from the comments quite a bit. And if you want to interact with me, the place to do it will be on Substack for the most part. Now, I'm still going to, answer comments, respond, but it's going to be more like thumbs up, heart, thanks for commenting, that kind of stuff. If you want to have in-depth discussions and you want to engage with me, come to my community and let's build it together and do it that way. So you'll be able to join Substack for free. I'll never ask you for money to consume the blog posts, but there are people who want to contribute and they have a little bit extra and they want to, that's fine. So I'm going to have a monthly paid tier, which is $7.99. Then I'm going to have an annual paid tier, which will save you 2 months, and it's going to be $79.99. And then I'm going to have a level called founding member, but I'm still kind of working out the benefit structure, how I'm going to do it, because I'm learning Substack as a platform. But right off the bat, the paid membership's going to, what I'm going to do is start creating, I think, audio versions of reading the blog, or video versions for people who are driving and they just don't have time to sit down and read, or maybe they don't like reading, or like my brother's dyslexic, he doesn't like reading. So that kind of stuff. So if you're not into reading and you don't want to read and maybe you just like to listen, so what I'm going to do is just narrate the blog post and create like an audio or video experience of that. So if you're driving or you just rather listen or you just don't like to read, so paid memberships will have access to those videos and audio files. Then we're going to have a member chat. And then we're going to, somewhere along the way, I'm going to do some t-shirts and some, stuff like that, like maybe a t-shirt that says, whatever I say. And then going to offer some consulting services for people who genuinely want like a professional consulting experience on their audit or their situation, whether maybe they have a lawsuit, whether maybe they don't. Not legal advice, but just my opinion on the case. And then somewhere along the way, and I've teased it for a while, we're going to be offering some digital products. The next level up is going to be a founding member. And I'd like to think right off the bat, I've already had Carolyn Bacon, without even hesitation, paid for the founding membership without even realizing what she was getting. The founding member is basically just for people who want to support. There's not going to be anything, crazy different. You're still going to have access to all the things that the paid members get and all the things that the free members get. But I'm also going to open up a direct messaging function for people who are founding members. There's not going to be very many people who want to throw $200 a year at my service. I realize that, and it's fine. I'm also going to be asking you, if you are a founding member and you sign up for it and pay for it, it's $199.99 annually. I'm going to send you a free gift. I don't know what that's going to be. It may be a t-shirt. It may be, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's going to be something in the realm of $20, $25 with free gift to send out to you. So if you sign up for your founding membership, put your shipping address in the note, please, or I'll reach out to you and ask if you don't do it. And then the founding members are going to get a larger discount. Maybe I'm thinking like 10% discount on the merch for paid members, maybe 15 or 20 for founding members, and then the same consulting or digital product structure. So that's the announcement as far as the community. I hope to see a lot of you guys there. I've already had a bunch of people sign up just from mentioning it in one video. But Substack is not a platform that everybody's familiar with. It kind of emerged in popularity when all the stuff was going on with Twitter during COVID and people were feeling like they were getting their opinions suppressed and that kind of thing. A lot of people started writing on Substack as a way because they're completely free speech. So as a result of that, I do not want to just get into it with people. My thought process on the comments is this. If you truly care about what I'm trying to do here, come over and join the Substack. And then we can have a bunch of conversations and all that stuff. But I find myself getting into, just stupid arguments with people in the comments because, quite frankly, it's a personality flaw. I'm a little bit thin-skinned and it aggravates me because I put a lot of work into my channel and I put a lot of work into making sure that I do things the right way. And so people will insinuate or just flat out accuse me of being a liar or being disingenuous, and it aggravates me. And it's too much of my emotional energy. So if you want to interact with me, you can do it in the community. And then I'll know if you're there that you actually care about what I'm trying to do and you're not just some internet troll. Next announcement is that my son and I are going to be doing a podcast. Now, more than likely, if you're in this law enforcement space, you won't be interested in our podcast. But what we're going to do, I was 19 when my kid was born. He's 20, he'll be 26 in September. He's 25. And we're basically going to be talking about, because we're very similar in our personalities and the way that we think, but the difference between us is 20 years of life experience, right? I mean, I was 19 years old. So we're just going to be talking about like stuff that is like father-son stuff, regular stuff. So it's not going to have anything to do with the law. Obviously, a lot of my life experience is centered around the law, so there's going to be heavily influenced there. But more than likely, most of you guys are not going to be interested in that podcast. But if you are, I'll be making some announcements. It's going to be fun, and he's going to be primarily responsible for the technical side of that. And then basically I'll just be talking, giving my ideas about whatever it is that he wants to talk about. It's primarily going to be his deal. And he just wants to do something fun and make some content and get used to doing the stuff. So, okay. Now, I'm also going to be I'm not sure if I'm going to turn this show into a podcast or what's going to happen. Scott, my buddy from Under Duress, he didn't really caution me against doing that, but he sort of gave me a cautionary tale about what happens when you do that. So we're going to be thinking our way through that, but there's going to be some podcasting stuff happening over the next couple months. So the next announcement, not really announcement, but just commenting on the Cops review. I thought that was pretty cool. I got a really positive response to the episode of reviewing Cops. Some people, of course, we always have the people that never trust anything, and that's fine. I understand it. It makes sense. And yeah, my shirt says coffee, dogs, and jiu-jitsu because it's awesome. And I got that shirt from BJJ Fanatics. Incidentally, I will have, by the end of the day, been attacked by all three. I was holding a dog this morning, and that dog kicked a cup of coffee onto me, severely burning my no-no square, and that wasn't great. And then later, I'm going to meet my son, and we're going to train some jiu-jitsu and have an open mat. So I'm going to be attacked by coffee dogs and jiu-jitsu all day, or by the end of the day. Okay, so back to Cops. So I just really had a good response. A lot of people thought it was fake. It's not fake. I looked it up. The episode that I did a review of was from season 17, episode 17, called Las Vegas Heat. It was a 2-part series. I'm going to do one a week. Probably this week's review will be of the other half of that same episode because an interesting thing happened with a murder investigation. Just going to be doing that. And I'm also considering doing a review of, there's an A&E show that I've been watching for a couple years now called Accused, Guilty or Innocent, and it's basically people who have been charged for self-defense homicides. Keep in mind the word homicide actually in legal parlance means that you were killed at the hands of another person, so it doesn't necessarily mean murder is a different thing. Murder, it implies all the legal elements, but homicide is just that you didn't die of natural causes. You died at the hands of someone else. So this show is about people who've been accused of murder because they took somebody's life, and then it's whether or not they had a privilege to do so under the self-defense. I watched an episode of that the other night that really got me in my feelings about the way lawyers handle cases, and I thought it might be fun to do either a mock trial of that or just a review of the episode and talk about how I might have done things differently. And then people have asked me to do maybe a couple episodes in this series of the Live on Patrol, and I may do that. What that led me to is, the fact that when I first started in this space, or when I first started watching videos in this space, I thought, well, people were obsessed with law enforcement. And I thought it was a phenomenon that started after the George Floyd thing, because I never really paid too much attention, honestly. I was just living my life and doing my thing. And then I remembered being a kid and my family watching Cops. Like, it was like I think it was on Friday or Saturday night, it was like Cops, and then it was America's Most Wanted. And it was like, no, we've always been obsessed with police. And I think it's really not an obsession with law enforcement. I think it's an obsession. It's an obsession with people that we consider to be living lives that we can't relate to, or an obsession with people that are on maybe the fringe of society, like criminality. It's really more an obsession with the social phenomenons that law enforcement respond to than it is an obsession with actual law enforcement. But law enforcement is the gateway to that. And I don't think it's necessarily just law enforcement. We also watch, EMS channels and, all kinds of different stuff. It's basically like, the adrenaline stuff is what Americans are adrenaline junkies, I think. And I just think our culture is obsessed with sort of first response and what happens, when the shit hits the fan. And so that's, I think, the reason or the root of our obsession with that. So now I'm going to move on to the live Q&A. I apologize for that. I just wanted to get a couple of those things out of the way. So I'll just kind of scroll back up here to the chat and talk about some stuff. Could you take a cop to small claims for violation of civil rights? Well, first of all, small claims means different things in different places. And state law determines whenever you sue somebody civilly, it's called a tort, T-O-R-T. That's what it's called. If it's criminal, it's called a crime, obviously, and if it's civil, it's called a tort. So it's under the umbrella of sort of wrongdoing, and if it's wrongdoing by the government and you're suing them, then it's a tort. Or if it's wrongdoing by somebody who breached contract or beat you up, assault you, whatever, and you're suing them civilly, it's a tort. And if you're being charged by the government, it's a crime. So, in Tennessee, our small claims process goes up to $25,000. And it just depends on whether the state law has, opened up the path for people to be able to sue the government for state law level claims. Most of the time when you're suing a law enforcement officer for civil rights violation, it's in federal court. So most of the time your civil rights violations are in federal court, but it just depends on whether your state has created a pathway to being able to hold people accountable for those where you are. Julianne says, is it unusual or common for a DA to ride along with law enforcement? I would say it's unusual, but not weird. I mean, so I think all DAs should ride along with law enforcement. And I genuinely mean that. This is going to sound weird coming from me. I don't hate the role of a prosecutor. I hate the way the job is done. I hate the fact that I shouldn't say nobody, but very few or a very small percentage of prosecutors actually adhere to the role of a prosecutor. I believe the role of a prosecutor is a gatekeeper to the criminal justice system. And your job is to make sure that fairness is observed and constitutionality is observed, and to train police officers to make sure that they do not do unconstitutional things over and over and over again. I see the role of a prosecutor as a completely different thing than the beast that exists today. If I had my druthers, and I've really given some thought in my life to running for elected position as a prosecutor, because I would do the job the right way, and I would focus on the things that would supposed to work and the way they're supposed to work. So I said all that to say they should ride with law enforcement, because you have to remember that most people who become prosecutors don't have a law enforcement background. They are prosecutors and public defense jobs and government jobs in general. They all offer something called public service loan forgiveness. And so when you come out of law school and you've got $200,000 or $250,000 worth of student loan debt, you can work for the government or a nonprofit organization for 10 years, and you can make income-based payments during that 10 years, and then they forgive the loans. And so a lot of these positions are filled by 26-year-olds who have zero life experience. Most of them were silver spoon kids who grew up in their parents' house and got to stay at home the entire time. Very few people who become government lawyers do so with, like from my background, with years and years of experience, a decade more of experience in law enforcement. It's just pretty uncommon. So it's a good idea for law enforcement officers to be hosting prosecutors so they understand what it is that they do. There's so many times that defense lawyers too, so many defense lawyers have no clue what the police do. They don't even know how to attack. If you understand something fully, then you know how to deconstruct it. And that's super important. I think what I'm going to do with the blog post specifically for now, it'll evolve and change as, just like this channel's evolved and changed. It will evolve and change as we go along. But I think what I'm going to do is take things that are said in the comments and use that to expand ideas. Instead of arguing with the person back and forth, I'll just take whatever challenge they posted and then I'll use that as a way to respond in a positive way that doesn't argument or debate, that's silliness. But there might be, and my wife actually gave me this idea, there may be a teaching moment in that. And so that's what I'm going to try to do. And I'll give you a good example. And I have to pull it up on my phone. There was a guy that commented yesterday. I'll probably at some point do a blog post about it. But it was off the short that I did on when the police officers are here to give Miranda. And this is not, I'm not even going to say the person's name. This is not to try to poke fun at anybody. You got to keep in mind, you spend 3 years training yourself how to think like a lawyer. You're not expected to just watch a YouTube short for 30 or 60 seconds and then have a complete grasp. Hearsay is so freaking complicated. I'll give you an example. The episode that I did last week, I did like a short. I cut a short out of that talking about hearsay. And I said that hearsay, the legal definition, is an out-of-court statement offered in court to prove the truth of the matter asserted in the statement. So again, my example was, I was on a crash scene. I saw a car accident. I told a police officer on the scene the light was red. So if the person that wants to offer that statement in the courtroom offers it to prove that the light was red or to prove the truth of the matter asserted, then it's hearsay. But if later I said, no, I didn't tell that to the police officer, and the person wants to use that not for the truth of the matter, not to prove the light was red, but to prove that I was actually there and gave a statement. So that's offering the same exact thing that under one circumstance is hearsay, for a reason not to prove what I said was true, it's an exception. Or to use it to impeach prior inconsistent statements. So there's the functional definition of hearsay, and then there's a bunch of exceptions. And then there's stuff that's ordinarily hearsay that's considered not hearsay because of its category. So it's very, very complicated. But so the example I started to talk about was this guy looked at my Miranda video and he said, this was his statement: if a reasonable person believes he is not free to leave, he is seized under the Fourth Amendment. And then he wrote the sort of dagger in the heart of his comment, which is simple as that. And then he said, if he is removed and or separated from his property, he's under arrest. And so here's what happens. I'll say to somebody in the comments, cite your authority for your opinion. Because I'm not interested in when I talk about stuff on here, I'm not talking about my opinion about what I think should happen. I'm talking about the way the law works. And so I'm going to have a blog post on the difference between passion and delusion. I'm working on that now. Like, don't let delusion disguised as passion cause you to draw some line in the sand that's going to get you hurt. And what really concerns me about people saying stuff in my comments is that somebody will take that information and run with it and go out and get themselves arrested or, God forbid, killed by the police because they had a complete misunderstanding from somebody who said something just talking out of their ass because they had an opinion or an emotional response to whatever. There's no authority on this stuff. So just as a general matter, again, his comment was, if a reasonable person believes he's not free to leave, he's seized under the Fourth Amendment. Well, no, you're seized under the Fourth Amendment the second that you submit to the authority of the government telling you that they're going to control your movements. A seizure has nothing to do with, well, it's not nothing to do, but it does not define whether or not you're entitled. Keep in mind, the subject matter of this video is the Miranda warning. Okay. Being in custody and being seized are two different things. That's why there's nuance. And so then he says, simple as that. It's not simple. It's not simple in any way. And then he says, if you're separated from your property, you're under arrest. That's not true. You're just further seized or your property's seized. Now, if you're in handcuffs for a certain period of time under detention, then the courts have said that that is tantamount to an arrest. But there's nothing simple about the difference between seizure and custodial interrogation and what's required of a Miranda warning and arrest versus detention. There's nothing simple about it. It may be simple in your heart And that's fine. It's just not the truth. And I don't want anybody to think that. That's kind of the idea of like those sort of things, fleshing out those ideas is what the Substack is going to be there for. Oh, yeah. So that's interesting. First of all, I didn't know Justin know who existed. Justin, when I started watching Justin a year ago, when I started doing my channel, I think I did a video on Justin's in May. I think he had like, if we look back at that video, I think he had like 57,000 subscribers and he's up to like 120. He's crushing it, man. Absolutely crushing it. I didn't even know he knew who I was, but somebody came to the comments the other day and said that the Random Patriot sent him. So thank you for that, Justin, if you're having to see this. So he says, Justin did lose his case, but so keep in mind, Justin was at a city court. This is going to get even more convoluted and confusing. But when you're in a state court and you're charged with a crime, the evidentiary burden is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But if you're charged with a city ordinance, it's considered a civil offense. And the evidentiary burden to prove the civil offense is proof based on the preponderance of the evidence, which is literally like 50.1 or 50.000000001, right? Like it's just barely more than not. So it's like it's more probable than not. That's the evidentiary standard in a municipal court. In most cases, they're civil violations, they're not criminal. And so that's one of the reasons. And then because you've got a lot of home cooking in those situations, and that's exactly what happened to Justin. If he appeals that on the state level, he's going to win 100%. So Show Me Audit says, Southern Drawl Law, I love how lawyers think and how a large part of the lawyers, the one that started your in particular, normally can't get out of the box. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused about that. Maybe give me a little clarification on your comment. I'd like to flesh it out. All right, so Show Me, it says, the lawyers think in particular pattern and many of the ones that start as lawyers specifically. No, for sure. Yeah. I actually call it a disease of thinking like a lawyer. It's, that's, and I make the joke sometimes that this is why people don't talk to us at barbecues. It's also why people don't talk to you unless they have a legal question, which is also exhausting. But yeah, it's hard to turn off lawyer brain. Could be, Child says, Uncle Bill touched me in a bad part, not hearsay if you offer it to the jury to explain why mom went to the police. I would probably disagree with that because let me explain. And this is why hearsay is confusing, because you're offering it for the truth of the matter. Well, you're not really. See this it's nuanced. The judge, it's all based on how the judge interprets it. If I'm arguing against it, I might say no, because you're arguing, you're tainting the jury's opinion of that statement by saying that mom did it because mom found faith in it and mom found that it would be true. So in the jury's mind, if the jury hears that statement, they're going to automatically assume that it's true because mom believed it true. And so you are sort of bad pun, based on the example, backdooring that as a truth of the matter asserted. But there's a judge out there that would be like, no, that's fine. And then the other thing is too, if the other side is not paying attention and doesn't object to it, it comes in anyway. So there you go. So Philip says, if it's hard to turn off lawyer brain, why is it exhausting to be asked legal questions? It's not exhausting to be asked legal questions because I'm always thinking like a lawyer. What's exhausting is knowing that you don't have any value to people unless they're using you for something that you have that they don't. And then you have to start thinking, well, I charge $250 to $300 an hour every time I answer a question or every time I do anything. If I take a phone call, that's a $25 to $30 phone call because for every 0.1 I'm billing, right? That's the thing. You can't have it both ways. But people want it both ways. People want a lawyer at their beck and call for absolutely free. And then they know you can't turn off lawyer brain. So more than likely you're going to answer their question. So what's exhausting about it is that sometimes I don't want to think at all. When I'm thinking like a lawyer. Sometimes I don't want to think, and I certainly don't want to be used for the 30 minutes I might have to just sit and have like numb out and go to no mind, right? So that's the answer. Judy says, what about the swatting incident from the guy from InfoWars? How can we got a call give them so much leeway? Are there any limitations to it? I'm not familiar with that particular case, but swatting is a major problem. No, not really. I mean, the problem that the police are in with the swatting, and I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just asking you to just think about it for a second. And I'm not talking to you, Judy, specifically. I'm answering your question. Is if they don't take it seriously. And then they find out later that 7 bodies have been discovered in a house and they got a call. Now, that's a problem, right? What's funny is that, see, incrementalism, this is a sort of gives way to another discussion. Incrementalism is the most powerful process in life. Nothing happens all at once. And it's kind of like taking your money. Let's say you have $100 and you're like, I got 100. Well, let's say you have 100,000. I've got $100,000. You're like, man, this money's going to last me forever. And then you go, like my wife goes to Dunkin' Donuts and buys a freaking $7 coffee every single day of the year. And then you're like, holy shit, it only took, however many days for me to nickel and dime that coffee away. I promise this is going to make sense when I'm done. And you realize that you've done the thing that you were worried about doing, which is spending all your money. And this thing that was supposed to last you forever didn't last you forever because you incrementally chipped away at it. So police go, oh my God, we've got to respond in full force to this incident, because what if there's 8 dead bodies in the thing? We don't do it. The public's going to immediately distrust us, but they don't worry about the incremental $7 coffee version of chipping away at the public trust every day by muting their body cams and doing all this shit, right? There you go. That's my take on it. I don't think there's any limitations, because I think that the emergency, if true, warrants the response. And they just have to be very, very disciplined and understand that could absolutely go south if it's fake. This is why I play golf. Why I play golf and why I do jiu-jitsu, because it's my only escapes. These are my only escapes, because it doesn't matter how smart of a lawyer you are or how much you understand the law, using a 60-degree wedge to get close to the cup is not going to change. And moving a 200-pound person off of your chest and side control is not going to change simply because you understand hearsay. So it's an opportunity to be forced to think in a different way. So that's the reason I like jiu-jitsu and I like golf. In West Virginia, that is called effect on the hearer. The state can get an admonition that the jury shouldn't take the statement as true, but it can be used to explain why mom did what she did. Yeah, maybe so. It was funny because I grew up, I lived in West Virginia the first 35 years of my life, but I never practiced law there. And so I never learned the West Virginia rules on hearsay, because I finished law school in Tennessee and immediately, well, I just love it here, so stayed here. So what you're saying is that, so there's another rule called 403 where you argue to the judge that any piece of evidence, whether it's photos or it's an evidentiary rule, where you argue to the judge and say, well, this shouldn't be allowed in because it's unduly prejudicial on the jury. See, the state's allowed to offer evidence that's prejudicial to the jury. That's the whole point. You want to prejudice the jury. You want them to think that the defendant's a piece of garbage, and they want them to convict him. There's a line that has to be evaluated, and you have to balance between the amount of prejudice you're allowed to exact upon the defendant because it's fair and it's evidence, and then unduly prejudicial. So a lot of times when you have a crime scene that's like super gory, people will say they can't see the photos. I mean, that's going to unduly prejudice the defendant, and he has a presumption of innocence. He may not have committed this crime. And so the jury's going to see those photos, and they're going to be like, we have to hold somebody accountable. This is the guy in front of us. This is the guy, right? So that sounds like a 403 argument where the judge might allow it in and give a limiting instruction to the jury to say, how they should understand it or how they can interpret what the statement is. But again, if somebody doesn't object, it comes in anyway. John, you're right. That's why judges make the big bucks. It depends. If you're a high-level defense attorney, like I've heard David Fleischer talk about taking a pay cut. Judges in the state of Tennessee make $200,000 a year. Has there been any update on Felix v. Barnes? I think you asked last week. It's okay. The Supreme Court's very slow. It'll take 3 or 4 months for them to put out an opinion, but the second it comes out, I'm going to talk about it. Dave says, did you see John O'Keefe's autopsy photos? So I did see this last night. They look like puncture wounds to me. They look like puncture wounds, like dog wounds looks like to me, or potential like an ice pick or stab wounds. They do not, the shape of those do not look like abrasions or road rash. But I only saw that last night for the first time. I actually was watching Investigation Discovery. We're watching that, and somebody was doing, she's got a series on there where she's talking about the trial and stuff leading up to the second trial. So that was the first time I've seen it. I don't know very much about the Karen Reed trial other than just what people say in the comments. I've never watched much of it. What don't you like about Tennessee's back the blue? Well, I don't like entanglement with law enforcement. I believe that law enforcement should not be tied to any political organization because it provides incentive structures for law enforcement, and we don't need incentive structures for law enforcement. Law enforcement is supposed to be doing a down-the-middle, apolitical job. And to me, I don't think it makes any sense to align yourself with a party as law enforcement officers or as leadership or, and somebody pointed out the other day, yes, the sort of virtue of law enforcement is a Republican theme. And then the unionization of law enforcement is something that the Democrat Party has traditionally loved. And I don't love that either. Specifically, the Back the Blue Act requires, I think it's a $5,000 or $10,000 fine for assault on a police officer. And like it can literally just be like spitting on a police officer or just brushing against their chest. And it's gradated, so it depends on how severe it is, the thing that you did. But it's a mandatory fine of it's at least $5,000. It might be 10. And then it's up to 180 days mandatory jail service, and then it makes it an e-felony. So the problem is not so much that you want to protect people that are sort of in the fray. necessarily. It's that the more you see law enforcement as a protected class of people, the less rights the people have. So that's my take on it. You don't have to agree, and I'm sorry if you don't. That's just how I feel. You have commented on the Jeff Gray video posted about the arrest and fondled the guy's privates. That's illegal, right? Well, fondle has a subjective meaning, and the truth is that what you're supposed to do when you do a search of a person that you're putting in your car is do a groin swipe. So you're supposed to come up from the back to the front and then slide your hand with your thumb. Obviously, you're not supposed to do this on your way back out. This is a groin swipe. That's proper. That's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to go all the way up and then swipe back to make sure. You're supposed to swipe on both sides so that you can make sure that they don't have guns or knives. Scott says the three branches of government are not intended to work together as they do, but they are supposed to balance the power. That's absolutely true. Man. Okay, guys. Well, I hope you guys are getting something out of this. I feel like you are. More of you are showing up. It's getting more traction. This is really just my way of connecting with you guys and have a more like meaningful community-based thing. Watch for our Facebook, Instagram, probably a TikTok. We're going to be doing all the other platforms. And now that I'm starting to do cuts from my long-form content to create short-form content, I'll be doing some of those other platforms that are shorts because I'm already doing the work to create YouTube shorts. I'll just double post them in different places. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Hope y'all have an awesome Saturday. Hey, John Eagle, thanks for popping in. Thank you guys for everything. I appreciate it. Please head over to Substack and sign up. Even if you don't like to read, just because that's where you're going to connect with me. If you want to connect with me, that's where I'm going to be doing most of the connecting. So appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful day. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. Leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.